And hey, everybody, welcome. You're on the AdSkills Pro podcast. And in this season, we're doing flashbacks, flash forwards. No, flashbacks, I think is the correct term. We're going around for popular in-demand guests from Pine. And we're checking in, seeing how they're going. Nothing much has happened in the last 12 months, no sort of, nothing like a global pandemic to, see how test people's mettle and see how they're going. And it's been fantastic to check in. And today we're checking in with Nate Smoyer, and it's a thrill to have him on board. Nate, thrilled to have you here. Welcome. And I'd love you to kick off. If you could just remind for those people who didn't see you first time around, just give us a little background into your agency and who you're working with.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ed, and love the AdSkills community. More like a family, if you will. Man, I've really missed hanging out with everybody. It's been way too long. But it's great to be back. I'll do anything for the AdSkills community. I'm Nate Smoyer, born and raised East Coast, been living in the Northwest, now stuck in the Midwest, in Chicago. And a lot of people, first time I was around, I was running an ad agency called Real Team Panda. We specialized in working with early stage Proptech venture backed companies that were looking to scale their growth through paid media. And through not necessarily a planned series of events, but kind of through some planned series of events, I ended up actually joining one of my clients full time. We closed the agency. I joined a client full time, took over director of marketing at a company called Avail. We are a Proptech company focused on helping the DIY or independent landlord better manage their rental properties. And that was in mid 2019. And, this past, just a few months ago, we took the company, grew it, and were successfully acquired by Realtor.com, which is a brand operated by Move, which is owned and operated, or is a subsidiary of News Corp. So, we took the startup and took it through to the finish line that many hope and dream that they can get it to. And so, and then, put on top of that, all of last year being a pandemic. So it's been
wow.
quite.
So nothing, very quiet since we've spoken to you last, nothing much happening. Yeah. Well, it's been great speaking with you, Nate. Hey, let's pull some strings here. This is fantastic. So, that's a really interesting journey, like as a journey from agency into identifying a startup and becoming a director of marketing. What were you weighing up in the thought processes of going into a client, who was a client, right? They were a Dream 100 client when you started?
They were actually, I you can almost say they were Dream 10. So, I found my original prospecting list before I had built out my Dream 100. I did a top 10. Yeah. And, not that I'm not going to make this a plug, but that was before I went through the boot camp. And after I went through the boot camp with AdSkills, that's when I was like, no, wait, this 10 is not enough. And we 10x'd it, if you will.
Yep.
But Avail was one of them. They were one of those companies. And, it really stems to, like, when I started my agency, it was really out of a position of need. My resume was kind of jacked up. I didn't really have like a good job history. I had a lot of skills and knowledge, but it was hard to find a role at a company. And so I was like, well, I have to start something then. I'm gonna have to do something. And my passions are real estate. My skill sets are in digital marketing. And so it all came together. But when I started the company, I just drew on something I read in a book. I don't know if it was like one of those like 60-minute entrepreneur type books, but it was something along the lines of like, many small business owners fail to identify how they'll exit the business when they start. And that's a mistake. And so it always stuck with me. And I said, okay, if I'm going to start a business, how am I getting out of it? And there was 3 options. Someone buys my agency. The second one was we find a product, and we then, instead of build an agency, we use that to be the foundation of a product company. And the third one was join a client that wants you. And so everything about the way we built the business was very strategic. I never spoke to or sought out clients that were outside of my niche.
Hmm.
So to build that and be intentional, I started a podcast. Instead of having a sales call, I rescripted the needs analysis script and turned it into a podcast. So I just interviewed prospective clients, which is how I landed Avail as my client.
Yeah.
And
Can we pause there just for a second? Because
yeah,
this is I've now heard a couple of people doing this, and I just think it's absolutely genius, which is podcasters sales call. All
yeah,
right. And that sounds that's a really blunt hammer way of describing it. But dear friend of AdSkills, Dean Jackson, does it with he gets all his big lands all his big clients by interviewing them through their podcast.
mhm,
And another great entrepreneur, Steve Woosner, does it with in his area. He's a coach,
mhm.
and he does that. So what sort of what? So you use the needs analysis,
Yeah.
created podcast, and the podcast was focused. What was the focus of the podcast? What was the
Yeah.
tagline of the
Yeah. So
podcast?
TechNest Podcast is the show where we feature the leaders and innovators in real estate technology to showcase what they're doing to change the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate.
There you go, right? And that was your ideal. Like if you talk about the niche that your agency was targeting at,
Yeah.
that was that, and then you would interview your
Mhm.
dream 100.
Yes. And you know what's phenomenal? I did 89 episodes.
Yeah,
3 or 4 of those were monologue. So they were almost all interviews.
yeah,
Out of those, I think 4 of those companies, it might be 3 or 4 companies are now at unicorn status. So they're $1 billion valuations
yeah,
in an industry where I had zero context. I had no industry experience in prop tech. I didn't
yeah,
have any contacts. I didn't have any reputation. I didn't even have an email list. I never built the email list bigger than 200. There was no one but founders,
mm,
private equity analysts, and a few geeks who got
yeah,
on my email list.
yeah,
And the distribution of the show, I think a lot of people get confused that you have to have a big distribution or reach with the podcast. And I wasn't trying to sell to the people listening to the podcast. I was
yeah,
only putting together a marketable asset to
yes,
feature my guest, deliver value first to who I wanted to sell to.
yeah. And you create, and it's a completely different relationship
Mhm,
because they're coming through the podcast. You're
mhm.
as a peer, it's the Oprah effect. The person who
Totally.
asks questions, they don't have to. They are by definition not an expert, but the perception in psychology of it is that the person who asks the question is the person in charge,
Yeah,
right? It's the person who,
absolutely.
right? And so you get this whole thing. Hey, Nate, can I ask you, because this is another thing that you mentioned as you started. You said your resume was a bit jacked up. You didn't really have any. So what did you train for? Like pre all of this, right? What did you actually train for? Because I think that's always fascinating to hear.
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of my professional career, I spent at a software company that
Yep,
specialized in basically digital publishing.
yep,
And I was a bit of a jack of all trades in marketing.
yep,
I came in as the social media coordinator, then I built a partnerships program, then I built up some advertising, then I built a team around myself, which that's the Panda. That's what Panda stands for. It's partnerships and advertising.
yeah,
And the real team is just because Team Panda, and someone
yep.
took the Slack channel Team Panda, so I wanted Real Team Panda, and then I just named the company that because why not? Um,
Yeah. And
so
so like in terms of and this is coming somewhere. Like in terms of like education, did you have a college degree, a
yeah,
master?
I
What?
went to a hole in the wall school in the middle of Pennsylvania. I spent way
Yep.
too much money on I went through and did my bachelor's degree and an internship in 2.5 years.
Was your
Um,
degree in marketing?
in business with they had a minor program in marketing, but
Yeah.
truthfully I might have spent a fraction of time in the marketing because it was a joke. I
Yeah.
actually spent most of my time studying accounting, with the idea that the people who are going to make it the furthest, everyone's going to have the soft skills of marketing. That's why we go into marketing. We like
Yes.
the thought of being creative and feel and experience. But if I figured if you could work with numbers and be
Mm.
organized in that, then that would give you an edge as a marketer.
Yeah, well, and then the whole world of ad buying happened, and of course, that would give you an advantage. But the reason I asked that question, and with a janked up resume, because if we look to the point, so you're working with these clients,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you were working with the Avail
Mm-hmm.
for what, about 3 months
Only about
before
3 months.
you made the
Yeah.
decision to join them,
Yeah. So it's
and
funny is if you go back into some of the Slack channels, you'll see that I posted that I was doing an on-site with a client, and I'd never done one before. And the
yeah,
reason I wanted to do an on-site is I wanted to be in the midst
yes,
of the team and get the feel.
yeah.
And I had an inkling that they wanted me to join the team, but
Mm.
I wasn't going to be the one who made the first
How did you
offer.
get that inkling? What was
Well, there was a
the
few like joking side comments, like, how about you just join the team? And I'm like, well,
oh,
I
yeah,
got a really good business over here, I'm following my
yeah,
dreams. And
yeah,
on that on site visit, it was basically the last day. I sat with the co-founders and they printed
yeah,
up an offer on the spot and handed
yeah,
it to me. I mean, so I didn't have to refresh my resume, thankfully.
yeah. But this is a point, and this is a point I want to make, and I think it's such a powerful point for anybody listening to the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
is that I had no degree. I dropped out, right? It's there
Mm-hmm.
were just Justin's back in school now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's you know it's because there's nothing better than proving through actions, show don't tell,
Mm-hmm.
and for those of you listening to the podcast, there are many paths into media buying, and you effectively got a director of marketing position. So that's your title, right? You're a director of
Mm-hmm.
marketing.
Right.
Right. And so typically, even in a startup, if a headhunter was going to look for a director of marketing, they'd want, please give us 5 years of experience in a director of marketing role, and also your B
Yeah.
school, your MBA, your marketing, blah, 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 right? That's why you said jacked up resume, right? Because
Totally.
it was nothing like that. But here it is. You got this role in director of marketing. So tell me, what was the adjustment of going from multiple clients into this director of marketing role? What were the skills that you needed to brush up on?
Yeah, I actually immediately downloaded some Jocko Willink and went back through Extreme Leadership, and then I went through the Dichotomy of Leadership. I think that's what it's the second
Yes.
follow up to that was called. There was I think the Crucial Conversations. I went back through that. I mean, really, I went back to myself. Was like I have to go read about working with people in a team together as a you know in person every day.
Yeah.
I was working with other agencies and a
Yeah.
few freelancers as for fulfillment with the agency, but I didn't have the same thing that you have when you're on internal. So I mean, that was something that was a big adjustment. The other one was just reporting to a boss, if you will. I
Yes.
didn't have any bosses. You
Yes.
could say your clients were,
Yep.
but it is a little bit different. But I was very excited about being focused. Truthfully, I wasn't trying and wanting to build a big agency business. That was never the objective for me. It was I needed to do something. I mean, at the time I was literally driving Lyft. I was
Yep.
driving Lyft and taking contracts on Upwork.
Yep.
And Upwork, you invariably just burned all of your time and never made any money. And actually with driving Lyft in Nashville at the time, my last day was 3 years ago, St. Patty's Day. And that was the
Yep.
goal. The goal was to make enough money in the agency that driving cost me money. And so that was the last day I ever drove. And so, I mean, but yeah, it was really about working with other people and thinking in a little bit of a different mindset when you're part of the team and it's not building your company. But at the same time, that was one of the reasons why they wanted me in, because the marketing department I treat as its own business. It
Yes.
has its own budget. It has its own staff. It has its own, we have our own standard operations.
Yep.
I do my own hiring and firing and promotions, and you know so it takes everything it takes to run a business. You have that in your one marketing department in its own concentrated area.
Yeah.
So those were some of the things I had to like go back and like, okay, let's rethink. And, there was certainly some of it also like going in, like, I don't know.
Mm.
and not being afraid to just be saying, I don't know. I've
Yeah.
not done that before, but we can do it.
Yeah.
Just haven't done it yet.
Yeah. No, and and it's really important because I think, look, we love people who go out and run their own agencies. We love that, but there's also another area and category that we really love, which is, I think, friend of the podcast, Fernando Cruz, head of legacy research, is director of marketing there. Is he talks about being the intrapreneur, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how important entrepreneurs are for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just as legit, and particularly when you're a startup and you're director of marketing and you get acquired, that can be a very exciting time. Let me
Yeah.
tell you. So let's talk. Let's transition a little bit in terms of what you're seeing and talking about. And that's congratulations to you before I go on, Nate, because
Yeah.
that is
Thanks.
a phenomenal story. Um, Tell me what. Let's put your director of marketing hat on for a second, and what trends are you seeing in the media buying industry? What are you
Oh.
seeing?
Well, I mean, one thing is for sure. I know a lot of people in the AdSkills community probably pretty bullish I mean, Justin's bullish on Google, not so much on the Facebook, and I think that extends down. And I think that was one of our first connecting points, and I still share that. Just right now, I mean, Google's just treating me so much better than Facebook ever does, and I just keep going back and putting money into it, but I'm not really sure where it all goes. One thing is interesting. So Facebook wants to, and some of the ad networks treat us as if we're housing because we are working related to housing, and so there's some significant complications with that.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, housing in America has a pretty ugly history,
yeah,
and the ad networks never set up to aid that type
mm,
of redlining or any illegal
yep,
or illicit activity, but unfortunately with targeted advertising it can be used in that way.
yep,
So yeah, we had some big bets, and we can't do them because of how the ad networks work.
mm,
And so really what we've done to adjust to the way the limitations that are put on us and how we do our targeting,
mm,
and also it comes back to how our customer shops or really doesn't shop for what
mm,
we sell. We just kind of take a step back and reevaluate what are the biggest problems our customers are trying to solve.
mm,
Where would they go to solve those problems, and then how can we kind of how do we get in front of them
mm,
but then capture the audience? And so of all the things that are happening out there, I mean, a lot of it I don't get caught up in. Like we're not on
mm,
TikTok, we're not on Snapchat, and we're just getting started with YouTube. And I know we have a lot of room to run there, but we still have a lot of meat on the bone just with search and display.
mm.
And we stay focused on that, and we're opening up new channels to really feed that top of funnel. We
Yep.
just see the light is you got to own your audience, period. Look, you
Yes.
got to curate and own the audience. And so right now, I'm stuck. We're taking out a big sponsorship contract with another media company for the next 3 quarters because they've got the pool of fish. So that's, the net
Mhm.
strategy, right? You spend a
Yep.
lot of money to cast a net into a curated audience and pull back the rewards. And we
Mm.
have to do that because we don't own as much of the addressable market as we'd like to yet. And
Yep.
so that's our big focus is you've got to build the audience and own and retain it. And ultimately that means naming my phone number. I mean, that's what that means. And so
Yeah.
that's really what we were pursuing. So everything that's happening, that's fine, that's great, it's dandy, but we're just keeping it simple. We're not
Yeah.
getting caught up in, Facebook's restricting how many events and all these other things. I don't really
Yes.
care, honestly, because we're not getting complicated enough to hit the limits of it. We're just keeping it real dead simple.
So what's it, you went how long were you director of marketing before the pandemic hit?
Uh, well, I mean, let's see. We recognized it the very first week of March where we sent everyone
Yes.
home,
Yep.
and so
Wow, that was early actually.
8 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
we started talking about it late February, and then first week of I mean, there was one week in March where, one of our co-founders walked in and he and I were talking about, I was like, no, I think this is pretty serious. Like we might have to go home. And we sent the email that night, letting everyone know, hey, we're work from home. If you need to go to the office and get your computer, that's fine. But we're not going back to the office for some time.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And did it as so as a company, did from a marketing perspective, did you have to make any adjustments for the pandemic, or did it turn out to not have that effect for you?
It's interesting. So something I think the phrase is luck happens when opportunity and preparation meet, or something like
Right.
that.
Correct.
We were already in a unique position to be prepared somehow. So,
Yes.
we were in the process of raising for our Series A round of funding.
Yep.
And because of that, and we operate like a Midwest company in that we're cash
Mm.
conscious. So we
Yep.
weren't just burning cash with the belief that, yeah, we'll figure it out someday.
I love how you say, I don't know if people picked up that reference, that you
Yeah,
behave like a Midwest company as opposed to, say, a Silicon Valley company
correct. That's
or
correct.
something
Yes.
where it's burn cash at all like burned cash to build market share.
Right.
You're actually
We pay attention to CPA and CAC very
a
closely.
little bit
So
more traditional business values. I love that.
yeah, yeah,
I love that
yeah.
expression.
That's why Facebook gets a small percentage of our ad spend. But
Yes. Yes.
but so we were already being conservative on how we were allocating our dollars, because we didn't want to overcommit and never be in a position where we had to lay people off because we didn't have the money to get to the next stage. So we prioritized our people and systems before we went and spent on ads.
Yep.
And so when the pandemic hit, we were already in a bit of a conservation mode until we completed our round.
Yep.
And so when that happened, in the real estate industry, people stopped moving very quickly in March of last year. We did not see what we were seeing this year in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And it delayed until about June. It was a very bizarre cycle last year. And the immediate thing we went to was, okay, how do we adjust to this? And I took my modest team. It was me and two others at the time. We had just lost one, 2 months prior, and we branded a research team internally, which was honestly, it was nothing more than Google Forms and an email signature that said Avail Research Team.
Yes.
And we talked to our customers and essentially just created a flywheel. If you ask your customers questions, promise a recap on the back end, it'll give you a ton of content, and then they'll want to tell you more. And we did that with what came out of the pandemic. And ultimately what it ended up transitioning us to is actually really having a reputable research arm. We now have a formal partnership with the Urban Institute. We've been in talks with, I can't say who, but some very high up government offices. And we have several partnerships nationwide now. We're launching a pilot in a major US city in the next few weeks. And all because we sent out some Google Forms and asked our customers what they needed to know from us. And so we just reallocated energy and efforts to, kind of balance out the other end of not spending as much on acquisition. And then summertime, we closed our Series A and we went right back to it, put coal in the fire.
Turned out that was a fabulous way of often that, you mentioned the flywheel, right? That, content as, how do we serve our customers? What do they need right now?
Yeah.
What do they need from us right now? And putting that first is such a, I think Eugene Schwartz said that marketing really is education, and then the sales part is the offer. Educating your clients and helping and serving your clients is a really powerful part of marketing.
Yeah. I tried to, push onto my team as frequent as possible. And I don't know where I came up with this. I don't think I came up with it. So someone gets the credit. I don't know who, but I just say all great marketing starts from a position of empathy. And you have to have true and real empathy for your customer. And there's a lot of marketing out there in sales that generates dollars. And it doesn't mean it's great marketing. And it doesn't mean that it comes from a position of empathy. But I believe all true great marketing comes from a position of empathy.
Yeah. Is there potentially, because your market is interesting, right, with in terms of real estate tech and the clients that Avail serves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there any particular Google technique or thing that you've used which is particularly worked well in terms of making visible those prospects for the first time? Is there anything in particular that you've done that
Yeah.
you thought, wow, this is pretty cool?
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point. So there's about 8 million DIY or independent landlords who own and operate their own real estate
Hmm,
as a rental unit.
hmm,
Um, Now, but if you were to plug in, say, real estate investing as a category to target,
hmm,
you're going to get audiences of 50, 60, 70, 80 million.
hmm,
So clearly that doesn't align. There's lots of different ways to invest in real estate. Wholesaling, BRRRR is a type of buy and hold. You have REITs, you have syndicates, you have fix and flips, there's all kinds of stuff.
yep,
And the reality is we only want the people who want to buy, hold, and manage. So they're not
yes,
even truly passive hiring a property manager.
yes,
Doing that and going back to the empathy, we literally have to know all the problems they experience. Now, the beauty is I'm a DIY landlord and I have been for several years. I
yep,
maintain being a landlord. I manage 2 rental units in Washington State from Chicago. And I
ah,
deal with the issues that pop up from here and there. And so I go through it. I use the product myself. So I'm
yep,
I'm in all the forums, I'm in all the chats, I see it, and so is my team. And so we really understand their problems. Well, then if you know what Google is used for, then
yep,
you know that it is looked at as a first line of defense to solve all problems.
yep,
So then be where your customers are. That's just point blank. It's really honestly as simple as that.
yeah.
So as far as tricks or tactics, not much at this point. We're actually really fortunate. So I actually a few months back after we closed our Series A, I hired another AdSkills agency to help
Ah,
us. Yeah, so we have another AdSkills agency
oh, that's
executing
awesome.
all of our ads. So Facebook, Google, Instagram, we hired another AdSkills agency. Shout out outside ROI, Mike Sebastian. So they're the ones actually executing our ads for us.
Yeah. Oh, it's the circle of life. Isn't
That's
that
right.
beautiful?
And Mike was the first one who hired me out of the AdSkills community.
Oh, you're joking me.
No, I'm dead serious. He was the first one who gave me a shot.
Oh, what a story. What a
Yeah.
story. That is so good. And something I don't want to, as much as I love the circle of life ad skills process there's something else I want to pick up on, and this is probably a great point to finish up, is that market focus. The fact that you are a landlord, the fact that these, like, it's real for you, and that's what we try to encourage when we talk to agencies about their Dream 100.
Mhm.
Focus on an area that you're curious about, because where the forums are, where the groups are, right? The issues, you get that empathy, as you mentioned, Nate.
Mhm. Yeah.
That, to me, like, I hope people don't skip over that, because understanding, we encourage our ad skills agencies to understand their clients' customers better than the clients do.
Mhm.
And there's what a fantastic way, of eating your own dog food is an absolutely brilliant
there's
strategy.
so there's so many benefits out of that Dream
Mm,
100 exercise. I mean, when I started it, I got into the list and I don't think I got to 25, and I looked at the list and I was like, there is no way in the world I'm going to contract with these real estate companies
mm,
with BMX, which is my one of my passions, and
yes.
energy drinks. I was like, this doesn't make any sense, and just scrap the whole thing. I was like, real estate it is. And you talk about understanding your customer's customer. you know
Yep.
i I went the step a little bit further with that. People might ask, like, why Proptech? And
Mm,
specifically, I always said early stage. I don't go for Series A. So before Series A. And the reason is venture capitalists nearly always ask for ridiculous percent rates of growth year over year. And the fastest way to market is through paid advertising. And so if you're going to achieve 80 to 100% year over year growth, you either have significant viral or network effects built into your business, or
mm,
you're leveraging paid media to gain traction quickly. And so if you're an ad agency, with a specific focus in a niche that also requires high percent rate of growth, you're the only person in that in that industry saying that you're the person, you're getting the contract.
Yeah, exactly right. And if you're using a podcast in that very small niche as an
Right.
end run around the whole process, then you tie it all together. Nate, this has been a awesome interview. I'm so thrilled. I'm thrilled for your success. I'm thrilled for you and the team at Avail for being acquired, and I love the fact that we've got to keep in mind that St. Patrick's Day 3 years ago you were driving a lift and doing Fiverr
It's true.
gigs.
Yeah,
Right?
it's true.
Extraordinary. So just well done to you. Hey, if you're not on the market anymore, but if people want to reach out, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always down to connect. So Nate at realteampanda.com. It's still the email. You can find me there.
Yep.
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter mostly. Those are great channels to connect. I'm still in the AdSkills
Fantastic.
Slack channel. So I mean, you
Great.
can DM me. It's not that hard to find me.
No,
But
absolutely. We encourage that. And if people will allow me a small plug, we recently updated the Dream 100 process through a challenge in Pro League. So if you're listening to this and you are a member of Pro League, that Dream 100 exercise, we've completely revamped it and updated it for 2021. So that's something that is available inside the AdSkills network. So little plug there at the end for us as well. Hey, Nate, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. All the contact details, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the description below. If you're listening in your podcast player of choice, they will be in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Can't wait to speak to you next time.